What is the role of national legislation in the 2015 climate change agreement? That's one of the questions legislators at the ongoing World Summit on Climate Change in Mexico are hoping to provide answers to. On the sidelines of the summit, the honorary president of Global International, John Guma, tries to provide the answer. He told our correspondent Ayola Kasim that if the countries can put in place legislation for doing their bit, then there will be an institution upon which the overarching program can be based.
Some of the legislators here are not happy. The reason, many of their colleagues, especially the heavy polluters, are still denying the impact of their actions. Unfortunately, while this is going on, the impact of climate change is getting worse.
The Australian and the Canadian government are behaving disgracefully, both of them, refusing to accept the science, actually going back on what should be done. And I think this is a very, very considerable damage. They are both rich countries that ought to be playing their part. They've both grown rich because of pollution, and both of them are failing to meet their obligations internationally and refusing to accept the science. I think that's a scandal, and it's a very serious international scandal. It's not a frustration. It actually creates anger.
And the Lord's anger is also extended to the United States, which, in his words, is politicizing the issue of climate change, using its internal problem to make it very difficult for the world to operate.
In the United States, climate change has become a party political issue, which is, as far as the rest of the world is concerned, nonsense.
Despite this sad occurrence, there are other good news to share with the legislators. The head of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change says the legislators are actually getting more results.
We now have almost 500 climate laws in more than 60 countries, covering more than 80% of greenhouse gas emissions, up sharply from previous years. This is due in large part to the dedicated groups here today.
Between now and then,
the head of GLOBE in Nigeria, meanwhile, believes Nigeria needs to state specifically its legislation on climate change.
As far as climate change is concerned, there need to be a specific law on climate change, which we don't have. We always derive whatever legal provisions from existing environmental laws that do not have very close connection with what we are doing right now in terms of climate change.
Sadly, no Nigerian lawmaker is present here. It is said to be one of the countries with potentials but very little performance. Meanwhile, the legislators here are going into the final rounds of discussions with great optimism. From the Legislative Palace of San Lazaro here in Mexico City, I am Ayola Kasim reporting for Channels Television News.